So my name is Ben Kendall, and this is my presentation about breaking into InfoSec, or how I hacked my way out of poverty. So a little bit about me. I'm an associate security consultant at NCC Group. I'm a former journalist, former filmmaker, and former wage worker. So I've done all kinds of different kinds of wage work, like I was a janitor, and I've made several different kinds of pizzas and sandwiches and coffee. And I dug trenches and made roads and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of the wages of ADHD, I suppose. And I had no formal IT experience. Back in 2016, I had a life change. And I was kind of the guy on the couch with my friends, kind of all over Oregon. And that will come in later in the story, but to suffice to say, it's not fun, especially doing that for several years. So let's talk a little bit about where I work. NCC Group, it's the largest penetration testing consultancy firm in the world, and it's a fantastic place to work. Everybody is very knowledgeable and just fantastic bunch of InfoSec people. A little claims to fame. The CSO exploited the first buffer overflow. The chief scientist also created the time delay SQL injection, and the pass the hash, excuse me, was discovered by an ex-NCC employee. So coming into there, it's pretty intimidating, to be honest. So let's talk about me being poor and trying to get into InfoSec. So the way I wanted to run this talk is I wanted to give somebody that's trying to do the same thing that I did some actionable advice, because perhaps my situation was an outlier. So I'm going to go through kind of what I went through and see if it applies. So I do pen testing. I'm part of the offensive part of cybersecurity. So I'm a hacker for hire. I break into stuff for money, and it's a lot of fun. That's not only what I do. I also do some consultancy about policy, stuff like that. That stuff's interesting, but what really gets me going is breaking into stuff. For instance, the other day I had a very successful engagement, and I owned their network rightly, as you could say. And when it happened, I had so much adrenaline hit my heart, and I was shaking for 2 hours. No other job in my life has done that. Actually, I feel like that when I had to go to work. The last thing I want to do is go take care of Karen and Ken screaming at me about why their latte is too cold or too hot or whatever. So say you want to break into InfoSec. What do you need to know? Well, programming's like #1, in my opinion. These opinions will differ from other people, but I think that just kind of having a good hold on a scripting language like Python, it's an excellent way to start. Some basic networking knowledge, because it comes into play all the time, especially for what I do. You're going to need to know the command line. You're going to need to have familiarity with basic pen testing tools like stuff like Metasploit or MSF Venom or Burp Suite, SQL Map, stuff like that. Hardware basics, like it's probably best that you build your own computer. It's just more secure that way, A, and B, it's fun. Hopefully that you'll get the opportunity to do that if you haven't. The fundamentals of computing, stuff like memory addresses, how CPUs work, and there's so much more. In fact, there's an endless amount. During my time as a journalist, it was the very end of my university career doing that. And I was walking around OSU, and it was this big, it was an incubator for startups, and it was all science and health related. And they had a whole bunch of just giant, cool science stuff, like liquid nitrogen and tanks that were cooling something that I had no idea what it was. And I was looking around me, and I thought, shit, I think I picked the wrong career. this is way cooler than what I do. I love journalism, and it does serve a purpose. The fourth estate's very important. However, it's kind of shallow. It's very broad, but very shallow, whereas technology is broad and deep. You can just fall into a rabbit hole and never come out. And that's actually what's so fascinating about it, to me. So when I first started learning Python, actually, I really liked creating stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I can be a dev. And so I started trying to figure that out. And it came to me that, like, oh, God, like it's almost impossible to get work as a dev, even if you've got like a GitHub repo. You need something more tangible to at least get in front of somebody. So I went out and got some pen testing certs. So I started with the EJBT, and I went on to the ECPPT. That was with eLearn Security. They're INE now. And both of them were very good. And then there's the OSCP, which I bought the course for and still have to take the test, but again. But it's in my opinion, I liked the ECPPT better. It was just more instructive. It just depends on your learning style, though. They're both great. So when you're doing all this, when you're really poor, it's kind of difficult to find time or space, especially when you don't have much space, and you're probably a wage worker and you're doing stuff for minimum wage, so that's usually part-time as well, because they don't want to pay your benefits. So you're getting these weird hours like Clopens, like you'll close one night and then you open the next morning. Brutal. So having any kind of energy to do pretty intense study, especially if you're not familiar with the subject matter that you're working with, it can be brutal. So it's going to take a lot of time, and you've got to understand that it might take longer than you think, and it has nothing to do with you. It's just your situation is going to affect the way you're apprehending this information. So remember that just vary your sources. Like if I didn't get something from a course, I would go read a book. If I didn't get it from the book, I would watch a video on it, or just read a blog post, or do something to somehow take that information in and make it more tangible to you. And so when you get burnt out, sometimes you just don't want to look at any technology at all. You're just like, oh, God. Like, I don't want to read any more code. I mean, I love it, but I've been doing this for 12, 14 hours a day for several months, and I'm just kind of over it. I would just like to relax. Instead, like, you can listen to a podcast like Darknet Diaries. Like, it's just kind of fun entertainment, but it's still within the realm, and you're still kind of educating yourself in an oblique way. And it's still fun. I mean, it's supposed to be fun. At least the offensive side, it's fun. Hacking is fun. So we got to remember while we're doing this. So after I got my certs, I was helping people to get theirs. I would coach them through techniques, problems that they were having. One of the things that I noticed is a lot of people were having problems getting in front of people for interviews. And it's because they just didn't stand out very much. Like they don't share their work. And so no one can tell if they're actually full of it or if they know what they're talking about. So one thing that you can do is to stand out is to share your work online somehow. I would highly recommend the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, and his other two books. I can't remember the middle one, but the last one was Show Your Work. So the middle one's about like when things get really difficult. And hacking is art. We're very creative people. We have to be. We have to find a different way in somehow. It's part of the game, and that's what's so exciting about it. So you can start a blog. That's what I did. I was falling back on my journalism skills when I did that. Or like a YouTube channel, if you're more into production. Definitely compete in CTF events. Maybe you'll place, and that you'll get your name out there that way. Bug bounties are good. Like if you've got a bug bounty to your name, usually that's something to crow about. Like you would call out and say, oh, I got this bounty on, I don't know, X company and got $500 or more. Or less, but it doesn't, like the money is great, but really it's the trophy that's part of it, at least for me. I haven't gotten any bug bounties myself. The trophies for me are getting root or domain admin, something like that. So I got hired at NCC. This is my first InfoSec gig, and I got hired from LinkedIn. And it was sight unseen. It just kind of came out of the blue, which was fantastic. I had applied to many places before, and usually it's thank you, but no thank you, because of course I don't have any requisite experience. Have a GitHub repository if you know how to code. It's interesting to me that a lot of pen testers, some of them just don't know how to code. Not necessarily, I haven't met them at NCC, but I've met them at other places, and there's no judgment there. But I think that I can't harp on it enough. Like, you definitely need to know, especially if you're using an exploit that you pulled off the internet. You need to go through that code and make sure it's safe, because you don't want to drop some manky exploit onto a client's network, and then it owns their network, and you didn't do it, but you did do it, if you know what I mean. So contributing to open source projects, that's a standard dev advice, right? But there's still lots of development and tools and hacking tools that we're using all the time. Or you can just make your own, because there's always a need for something. You might not know what it is, but eventually you'll find something. You're like, oh, I wish I could do X, and I can't. I have to do it this long way. I'll automate it, figure it out. And definitely help others. The best way to learn something is to teach it. And so when someone asks me, oh, like I can't do, what was it? I can't do something. I can't come up with a scenario. But if you research that and then you find out the answer to their problem, then you too have shepherded this person forward in their knowledge, but also you've improved your own. And that's fantastic. So I started learning Python in 2018, and then I started aiming at InfoSec stuff in 2020. I ended up getting an interview to be a teacher's aide for some InfoSec boot camp or something like that. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, this is a possibility. Well, maybe I'll just dive in and do InfoSec instead. And it's going to take a while. I mean, courses take a while. It's learning all this information. It's going to take you some time. And it's going to probably take you some time to pass the test. And it's probably going to take you some time to get a job. And the tales that you hear on the internet, there's like, oh, well, I passed the OSCP after only studying for a month, and I have no experience, and then I got a job right away. And I'm just like, did you, though? I don't believe you. I mean, if they did, awesome. That's great. But those people are definitely outliers. Like, they're not the bell curve. Like, they're like on either side of it. They're not in the middle. Probably in the middle, you're probably going to wait at least 6 months, or if not longer. And that's okay. It'll just give you more time to level up. And in the meantime, unfortunately, you'll have to work your job that you dislike. Or maybe you don't like it, or maybe you do like it, you're just wanting to change. So how did I do this? Like I said, I kind of leaned on my friends. And I was lucky enough to have that opportunity. I know that if I were to slave away on like a barista position for minimum wage or minimum in the metro, whatever, it will be very difficult to survive and also to do study. And add on to that, maybe this person has a kid. I do not, but in this hypothetical scenario, perhaps they do. That's even less time and less energy, and you're already exhausted. Wage work is very difficult. It's grueling, and it's taxing physically, emotionally, mentally. It's not ideal, especially to survive off of. If that's your main means of survival, it's really difficult. So here are some resources. I'll also be putting this up on my blog here eventually in the next couple of days, so you can check it out there. And I'll probably be spreading it out as well. Hacking the Art of Exploitation. That book is from 2008, so pretty old considering, but it's still great for buffer overflows. I highly recommend it for that. The Operator Handbook's got like tons of really cool commands that you can just kind of flip through and find out stuff you didn't know about whatever, like Linux, Windows, and different ways to get around things or query for information. Pretty much all of No Starch Press, they rule. So I'm just going to jump to the courses. The Cyber Mentor, Heath Adams, his courses are fantastic. I actually took those before I took the AGPT or EJPT. I couldn't laud them enough. They're just fantastic, and I love them. They definitely got me started. So, overthewire.org, Bandit, that was my first love. I loved that CTF, and there's like 40 levels or something like that, and it teaches you a little bit about Linux. It's great for beginners. A little bit about Linux and networking, little by little, every level, highly recommend it. VulnHub, Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, all those are great. OffSec's Proving Grounds, I really like those. They're really good to gear up for the OSCP, because all those boxes are made by the OSCP folks. So you're going to see similar stuff on the test. And the Pentester Academy, I've tried them a little bit. I don't have too much experience with it, but it's more kind of CTF boxes that you can attack. And definitely take advantage of YouTube. IPSec rocks, and it's true. That's his website, but it's also true. The guy is awesome. John Hammond, these are all the guys that I watched, and when I just didn't want to look at a screen anymore, I just kind of like would listen to it sometimes, and it was enough. So let's talk about just getting a job here in the last couple of minutes. So I was falling back on my journalism skills, like I said, and I asked Rob Fuller, aka Mubix. He runs the red team over at United. And I asked him a couple of questions, because I just didn't want to come at you with my experience. And so I asked him what the common issue facing unsuccessful candidates was, because naturally there's going to be more unsuccessful candidates than successful, right? There's only one person that they're going to hire, or a few, maybe, if you're lucky. But he says, like, lack of maturity, empathy, and drive are common themes among the candidates. And if the damage is done, it's pretty bad. It's huge trust. There's a lot of trust that's inherent in what we do. And I also asked him some advice. This one hit me hard, actually. Drop the imposter syndrome. He wasn't talking to me specifically, but like I was really happy that he said that, because I totally have that. Every day, everybody I work with is brilliant and talented, and it's shocking to come in and just like, oh man, I have no idea what this colleague said, but that happens to all of us. Everyone has that experience, so it's not just me, and it's not just you. So Tyler Russ, she is one of the HR people at NCC. She hired me. She's fantastic. She was quite the champion for me. And so she's basically said kind of roughly the same things that I did. You need to have something to show your work if you're in academics. So something that you did for like a project or like a club that you were running, so on and so forth. And soft skills are very important for both people that are in academics and not. And for Tyler, she also mentions that that's kind of that's often what gets people out of consideration, is they have no soft skills. And roughly that's what Rob Fuller was saying as well. Like if you can't speak to people kindly and respectfully, there's no way you're going to be able to speak to a client, especially if you just own their network and they're irritated. You need to fall back on those customer service skills, those retail skills, and diffuse that situation, because you want them to come back. These people have paid a lot of money for you to show up, and if you show up and wreck their network, and then you're just like, whatever. You're probably going to get fired, or at least talk to, and they're going to lose that client, and it is a great deal of money. So something to think about. So unfortunately, it's not the TLDR, but it kind of is, just for the end. So you need a good baseline of knowledge. You're never going to stop learning. You need to stand out, and you need to help others. And you've got to remember those expectations. There's no reason that you should stop. Don't stop not stopping. Don't quit. That's all. Thank you. Questions? This gentleman in the back. Are you hiring? Unfortunately, currently we're in a hiring freeze, but hopefully we'll be getting to start hiring again soon. Yes? What kind of labs and stuff did I set up in home? I like to use VirtualBox, and I'll just set up a virtual lab because, again, going back to I was quite poor, right? So I had a middle-of-the-road laptop for 2017, and I would just set up a virtual network on that. I just threw as much memory as I could get into it, and so I can run as many virtual systems as I could, run my own virtual network, and try and pivot from there, so on and so forth, practicing techniques. Usually I'd throw together a couple of vulnerable boxes, maybe one or two that I made myself that are just crap, just to practice pivoting, because pivoting is kind of a pain sometimes. Yeah?
For people trying to learn a scripting language, like you said, is super important, how do you recommend they find ideas for their own valid projects that are beyond just the paint by numbers tutorials, but a real idea for something useful they can use to demonstrate their skills and learn?
Sure. So for people that didn't hear it, he asked, how do you discover ideas to create your own projects? That's kind of a golden question. Usually, the ideas that I have, that I've had that I haven't even acted on, is because I've been so busy. But usually, it comes out of the ether. It comes to you because you have a problem. Usually, it's like, oh God, I can't keep doing this stupid command over and over and over again. I mean, that's just simple bash scripting, right? But if it were Python, for instance, when you're doing buffer overflows, you're writing your own Python scripts just to interface with that binary, and then you're usually also exploiting it that way as well. So you can, if you're using your own scripts, for instance, maybe you found an old app that people don't use anymore, or maybe they do use it, and you decide to just kind of reverse engineer it. That could be one thing. Yeah. Anything else?
Just a quick comment. Thank you for your talk. I appreciate it. If you want to hack on someone else's computer, a lot of these cloud platform providers will provide you free credits. Now, some without a credit card, but others with, and I would recommend that if you want to just tinker around and you don't have a lab at home that you can afford.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, they do give out free credit to students, I believe.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a good idea. Anything else? All right, well, this was my first talk ever, so thank you for my rambling.